Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with a focus on the presidential race and the results of our latest Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll. It shows Kamala Harris has trimmed Donald Trump's advantage when it comes to the number one issue in this race, the economy. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has the details.
This poll focused on swing states, showing Harris now leading among likely voters by 7 percentage points in Nevada, 5 points in Pennsylvania, 3 in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, 2 points in North Carolina, and in Georgia, they're even. Her leads are within the poll's statistical margin of error. Now, across the 7 states, Harris is ahead by 3 percentage points among likely voters. That's a statistically significant lead that's about 2 points greater than last month. The poll underscores that this contest could be decided by the narrowest of margins or come down to a single state in the Electoral College. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thank you. Well, there's plenty of reaction pouring into our latest poll. Bill Ferries is a senior editor for Bloomberg News.
The trend definitely breaking Harris's way so far. And one of the really interesting things about it is that she seems to be getting that momentum by chipping away at what has been Donald Trump's lead when it comes to voters' preference on or voters' belief about who would handle the economy better. Overall, that is still an area where Donald Trump has a 4-point lead. That's down from 6 points in our previous survey. But when you break it down further and look at some of those individual areas within the economy, you see that Harris now, people trust her quite a bit when it comes to things like housing prices and dealing with personal debt, credit card debt type of issues.
And that's Bloomberg's Bill Ferries, who says Harris also held an 11-point advantage on who likely voters trust to help the middle class.
Along with the presidential race, Karen, of course, we continue to follow the latest developments around the indictment of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us with more on that. John, good morning.
Nathan, Adams could make his initial court appearance today. He's scheduled to go before Judge Catherine Parker. He's charged with accepting illegal campaign contributions and free overseas trips from people looking to buy his influence in city government. The mayor responded outside Gracie Mansion just hours after federal agents searched his official residence.
Everyone that knows me knows I follow campaign rules and I follow the law. That is how I live my life.
The scathing indictment alleges Adams engaged in years of sustained corruption, accepting more than $100,000 in lavish bribes from foreign nationals. Adams claims he's innocent. His lawyer says it's neither unusual nor improper for government officials to accept some travel perks. It's unclear whether the indictment is the last word on federal investigations involving the Adams administration. Investigators have seized devices from the police commissioner, schools chancellor, 2 deputy mayors, and other trusted Adams confidants. The mayor vows to remain in office. Governor Kathy Hochul does have the power to remove Adams if he can't perform his duties while fighting the charges. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. Now we want to get the latest from the Middle East. Israel may be softening its stance on a ceasefire with Hezbollah. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says Israel will take part in discussions on a 3-week truce proposal from the U.S. and France. White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre says those talks are already underway.
Israel was aware of this statement, and now what I can tell you right now, we are having continued discussions that is happening with our teams in New York, and I'm not going to get into private diplomatic engagement, but I can assure you these conversations are continuing.
White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre says the goal of the talks is to allow residents on both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border to return home. Israeli bombardments since Monday have left more than 600 dead. Hezbollah has responded with hundreds of rocket attacks.
And now, Karen, Prime Minister Netanyahu is scheduled to address the United Nations General Assembly today. We get that from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
This comes as he is now saying that the military bombing of Hezbollah targets in Lebanon will continue indefinitely. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says another full-scale war would be devastating for both Israel and Lebanon. Netanyahu's address comes a day after Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas said regarding Gaza, "We will not leave. We will not leave." Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thank you. We want to turn to the markets now, and stocks sit in record territory ahead of a key inflation report. Later this morning, we get the Fed's preferred price metric. And Eric Winograd, chief economist at AllianceBernstein, told Bloomberg's Tom Keene the Fed has done a good job.
I do think that they deserve a lot of credit, and the inflation numbers that are coming out, as well as the ones that have come out over the summer and the ones that we expect going forward, suggest that they have done a good job of bringing inflation back under control. And as a result of that, you're right, it isn't as important going forward as it has been. The focus now is on the other side of the mandate, on the labor market side, rather than on the inflation side, and that's good news.
AllianceBernstein's Eric Winograd says monthly headline PCE inflation likely rose to 0.1% compared to 0.2% the prior month.
In Asia, Karen, China's long-awaited stimulus filled a huge week for equities. The benchmark CSI 300 index posted its biggest weekly gain since 2008. This week, officials pledged to increase fiscal support and stabilize the property sector to revive growth.
Checking out some stocks making news this morning, Nathan. Bloomberg News has learned ARM Holdings approached Intel about buying the chipmaker's product division, only to be told that it wasn't for sale. Intel was once the world's largest chipmaker, but it's become a target of takeover speculation since its business rapidly deteriorated this year.
Well, Karen, a merger may be in the works in the satellite TV business. As Bloomberg's Doug Krisner reports, DirecTV and Dish are in advanced talks.
The deal would create the largest U.S. pay TV provider with nearly 20 million subscribers. We are told an agreement could be announced in the coming days. Now, these companies are still working through details on how the combination might be structured. We are told it will be closely held, and DirecTV is in talks to control the entire entity. Past discussions of a DirecTV-Dish combination have faced antitrust concerns. However, the shift from pay TV to streaming has changed the competitive landscape, and it could make the path easier this time. In New York, I'm Doug Krisner, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Doug, thank you. Well, on the earnings front, shares of Costco, they're down more than 1%, despite posting higher than expected profit in the latest quarter. The big box retailer said shopper traffic in the U.S. increased from a year earlier, but shoppers spent slightly less per trip. Costco stock is up 37% so far this year. It's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Hurricane Helene made landfall last night in Florida's Big Bend area. Helene is forecast to produce torrential rains, powerful winds, and life-threatening storm surge. Bloomberg meteorologist Rob Carolyn has the latest.
Helene is northeast of Valdosta, Georgia this morning, moving to the north-northeast at about 25 miles an hour. It will continue to weaken this morning, but it's going to produce significant damage due to wind and rain across portions of the southeast and eventually the Tennessee River Valley, parts of the southwestern mid-Atlantic region as well. It went inland last night around 11 p.m. to the west of Steinahachie, Florida, as a Category 4 hurricane. Sustained winds at that time were 140 miles an hour. We'll notice it becoming a strong tropical storm today as it weakens moving inland. And again, some areas are going to end up with 6 to 12 inches of rainfall from this system as it continues to decay over the southeastern United States this weekend. I'm Rob Carolyn, Bloomberg Radio.
Thank you, Rob. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
The state is ready as soon as this storm passes and it's safe to do so, to commence search and rescue operations. We have 3,500 National Guardsmen standing by. We have our state guards standing by. We have state troopers standing by, and they will be active if need be.
Georgia authorities said 2 people were killed in a possible tornado as Helene approached. Another person was killed in Florida. Donald Trump is set to meet today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as tensions have been rising between the two over how to defend the country in its war against Russia. The GOP presidential nominee is facing accusations from his Democratic opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, that he is advocating for surrender. Trump spoke about the meeting Thursday with reporters.
As you know, President Zelensky has asked to meet with me, and I will be meeting with him tomorrow morning at around 9:45 in Trump Tower. And it's a shame what's happening in Ukraine.
The meeting comes less than a day after Harris met with Zelensky and expressed unwavering support. New British Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke at the UN General Assembly for the first time. Starmer says his nation is returning to responsible global leadership. The Labour Party leader won on a landslide election victory in July. He went on to say the UK will lead again, tackling climate change at home and internationally. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Giants and Cowboys at MetLife. First ever Thursday road game for Dallas. It was coming off 2 straight home losses, but the Cowboys came in having beaten the Giants 6 straight times, 13 of the last 14, and after an early 3-0 Giants lead, the Cowboys led the rest of the way.
Shotgun, good blitz pickup, and Prescott down the left side. Lamb broke the tackle. 35, outruns 3 men into the end zone. Touchdown, CeeDee Lamb.
KRLD. After that play, no touchdowns for the last 38 minutes, but 2 Dallas field goals by Brandon Aubrey, including a 60-yarder 4 days after he had a 65-yarder, and the Giants kept settling for Greg Joseph field goals. He had 5, but there were no Giant TDs, and the Cowboys won 20-15 to get to 2-2. It leaves Big Blue at 1-3. For the Yankees, it's 2 champagne celebrations down and 3 to go. They sprayed the bubbly last week in Seattle after clinching a wild card. They did it again at the stadium after a 10-1 rout of Baltimore that won them the AL East. They'll certainly spray with each playoff series win. Their first postseason opponent could well be Baltimore. Last night's win due to the pitching of Garrett Cole, 6 1/3 scoreless innings, and Giancarlo Stanton with a home run and then a 3-run double. And yes, Aaron Judge homered again. He's done it 5 games in a row, 58 on the season. So Judge in his last 2 healthy seasons has hit 120 homers. Mets play tonight in Milwaukee. The Dodgers clinched the NL West. The Tigers and Royals moves closer to wrapping up AL wildcards. Break up the White Sox, 3 wins in a row, raising their record to 39 and 120. Still 1 more loss gives them the record for most losses ever. In Montreal, U.S. swept all 5 4-ball matches on opening day of the President's Cup Golf. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. With less than 6 weeks until the election, Kamala Harris holds a thin lead over Donald Trump in the 7 states that will decide the election. That is according to our latest Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll. Here to break it down for us now is Gregory Corti, White House and political correspondent for Bloomberg News. Gregory, good morning. So how tight is this race now with 39 days to go?
Morning, Nathan. So, yeah, this is a razor-tight race. And so our Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll of the 7 swing states that are most likely to decide this election finds that Vice President Kamala Harris is at least tied or has slight leads in every one of these swing states, tied in Georgia and then up in 2 points in North Carolina, 3 points in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, 5 points in Pennsylvania, and 7 points in Nevada. Now, we have to say every single one of those are within the margin of error. But since they're all sort of on Harris's side of the ledger, you'd rather be in her position than Trump's right now. And she has been making some very slow momentum. These are all very small numbers, but at this point in the election, as close as this is what we're zeroing in on, these very small numbers. And she has incremental leads here. And that's fueled by voters beginning to trust her a little bit more on issues like the economy, like inflation, like housing costs, as she's talked about these, not just in her campaign stops in the swing states, but she's bombarding these states with political ads, reinforcing these messages that she has a plan for the economy.
Yeah, I know we've been digging very deep when it comes to the economic issues in this poll. What are we seeing specifically when it comes to how Harris has been able to chip away at Trump's advantage on that key issue for likely voters?
Yeah, she still trails Trump on the question of which candidate do you trust more on the economy. By 4 percentage points, voters trust Trump more. She also lags on immigration. That's why she's going to Arizona today. That's why she's going to the border to talk about immigration. She's really leaning into Trump's strengths and trying to make up ground there. She's always had a bit of an advantage on some of these other issues like housing, and then non-economic issues like abortion and democracy. democracy. Those have always been Democratic strengths going back to when Joe Biden was in the race. But she's really gone after Trump's strengths on these core economic issues. She's not always leading them, but one that I'm watching very closely is that voters now trust her on taxes more than they trust Donald Trump. That's pretty remarkable, since taxation has always been a Republican strength. She's turned the tables on that by talking about taxing billionaires and co-opting some of Trump's ideas on no taxes on tips, and also offering a larger child care tax credit than Trump is offering.
Got about a minute left, and this poll comes in the context of a 50 basis point rate cut that we just got from the Federal Reserve. How does that factor into what voters are thinking?
Yeah, swing state voters are very optimistic about that. They say by a good plurality, that they expect things to get better for them in the next year because of that rate cut. They're not seeing it yet. It takes a while for these kinds of things to percolate through the economy. You might not be in the market for a house, and so you might not be particularly interest rate sensitive. But we know that there are a lot of homeowners locked into their house. They would move if they could, but they're waiting to see those interest rates come down. Interest rates is an issue where Donald Trump still has an advantage. But again, if rates can continue to come down, that might be something that by Election Day is going to be to the benefit of Kamala Harris.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide on Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it, in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.